There we go. I'm Michelle Morris with Consolidated Planning Group. I'm a financial planner. Today we have with us Dino and Patricia. Patricia is a yoga instructor, a health coach, life coach, a seeker of wisdom. She's native to Houston, has fabulous grown daughters, 3 fun-loving dogs, and she's a seeker of life experiences. She has a real thirst to live life to her fullest. Dino Bautista is a pre-planning advisor manager. He is also born and raised in Houston. His great passion is serving families who include people of all ages and situations, and helping them discover that having the conversation ahead of time, pre-planning, is more about protecting their loved ones than it is about death. He knows that there's no single approach that is the right one for everybody, and he's trained in a wide range of options to help every individual's desires, traditions, and beliefs be met. He plans for meaningful tributes with families, everything from launching remains to the moon and hosting a send-off party to traditional church services, a final resting place in a local cemetery, and everything in between. So when you plan ahead, you can really choose what you want to do. So in a second, I'm going to turn it over to Dino to go through his presentation. But I just want everyone to know that we can't see you or hear you. We've got you muted. We think that it really helps cut down on background noise and things like that. But if you would go ahead and put any questions you have in the chat box, I will read through them and pause Dino or ask him those questions, interrupt him if you will. So go ahead and put any questions you have in the chat box. And without any further ado, we can go ahead and get started, Dino.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Michelle. First of all, thank you to the Consolidated Planning Group for putting this on and for inviting us here. Thank you both, Michelle and Meredith. It's going to be an honor for us to be able to share this information and give you all really what is important, another important piece to the financial planning portfolio. And so today, what I'm going to be sharing with you is how to plan to make it right. We have a presentation. We represent Dignity Memorial, particularly me and Patricia Barboza. And we call it Your Life, Your Legacy. It's about you and the legacy that we leave. So, I've been myself in sales and marketing for now 12 years. And I can tell you that 3 years ago is when I found Dignity Memorial. And it's really become a passion for me to help families. I've seen it firsthand when we lost my grandmother, and I got to see, how overwhelmed my mother and my father were, and, having to figure things out at that time, really not giving them a chance to grieve the loss that we had just, that had just happened. And so we've made it our mission to make sure that as many people that we come in contact with become a life well celebrated, that every detail about you can be remembered. We get to thinking that, if one of us had won the lottery yesterday, we'd all be celebrating, right? And we'd have a blast the next day or right away. We'd be celebrating because the odds of winning the lottery are 1 out of 292 million. But to put us into perspective, I think a lot of us fail to remember as humans that we've already won a lottery much greater than that, which is the lottery of life itself. According to scientists, to come into this world, it's 1 out of 400 trillion. And so if celebrating the lottery, right, if the lottery is worth celebrating, each one of us, as unique and special as we are, our life is worth celebrating too. And we can plan ahead to do that. At the end of the day, we only see 2 types of families that walk through our funeral home doors: families that come in that are prepared, their loved one was thoughtful enough, had the forethought to plan ahead. And so even though they're devastated, they sit down with a funeral director, and they don't have to spend a whole lot of time. They sign some finalizing documents, and they get to be back home with their family, which really during such a difficult time to endure, that's who we should all be with. But then we have families completely opposite of that. I mean, they are completely devastated as well, but they have no plans in place. And so now these families are jumping from funeral home to funeral home. And finally, they sit down with the funeral director and they spend a tremendous amount of time, hours upon hours, answering questions, bearing an emotional burden of having to make these decisions, not knowing whether or not they're making the right decisions, because maybe they never had that conversation, right? This is a conversation that can easily be avoided. We think about it, but it's not something that we talk to our family about all the time, right? And so that's why it's important. We want to make sure that we do this and reach out. And again, thank you to the Consolidated Planning Group to allow us to do this, because we want to make sure that everybody knows that there truly is a better way of doing this, which is planning ahead. And so the University of Washington conducted a study to find out what life's most stressful events are. And this is what they came up with for the top 6. On the screen, they're not in any particular order. However, this is the order that they discovered that they fall in, ranking them from 1 being the most stressful, 6 being the least. And what you'll notice is, well, to call them out, 1 is death of a spouse or partner, 2 is divorce, death of a loved one is number 3, 4 is personal injury, 5 is marriage, and that's not enduring each other over the years, that is planning the wedding. Just want to clarify for the couples that are in attendance today. And 6 is loss of a job. But one thing to point out here is that in the top 3 that we see, death of a spouse or partner, divorce, and death of a loved one, they all have something in common. And what that is that in each one of those, we have lost somebody, right? And so, one of the questions you have to ask yourself in order to be in the right mentality is, if I had passed away yesterday, and I say yesterday because we're all here today, so we know it didn't happen, but if it had happened yesterday, who today would have to walk into a funeral home to make my final arrangements? Sometimes we have couples that will look at each other and say, well, that would be you, honey, right? But we have to have the foresight to look past that, because there is times where the spouse is not in the condition to be able to make these decisions, whether it's because of health or maybe sometimes, unfortunately, we see that sometimes couples do pass away together as well. And so now who is walking through the funeral home doors, having to make these final arrangements? And so now we've left our family with that question, what now? And whoever that person is that would have to walk through those funeral home doors, I want you to realize that that's what we're doing this for. It's when we plan ahead, it's to ensure that our plans reflect our wishes, but it's also to protect them, right? Because who would they even know who to call, right? What type of service would you want? Should it be a cremation? Should it be a traditional service? If it is a cremation, should there be a celebration ahead of time? Should the body be viewed? What church should we use? There's so many questions, and so where would they start, right? At the end of the day, like I said, it's really just about protecting your family. We plan for important life events, weddings, college education, retirement. We insure ourselves against things that may happen, vehicle accidents, personal injuries, medical emergencies. So doesn't it make sense that we plan for what we all know is the inevitable, right? And so planning can protect your loved ones from having to make those important decisions during a stressful time, right? I mean, just think about this. We have so many times where, the loved ones that we leave behind, whether they're siblings, they're sitting at a table and maybe one has an opinion about what mom or dad would have wanted. The other one has a different opinion. And it's really stressful, and we can avoid them having to go through all that by planning ahead. And the last thing that we want is for the last memory of us being that disagreement that our passing caused, because it was a burden that we left them to make all of these decisions, right? Never having that conversation. And they wouldn't have to wonder if this is what you really wanted, because they know that you did this, you made these decisions. And of course, it also protects your family from the financial burden. That is the other burden. There's the emotional side, and then of course the financial burden that we leave behind as well. All of a sudden having to figure out, how are we going to pay for this? And what you can do is you can lock in today's rates, because the price of a funeral, cremation, and cemetery just about every 10 years doubles. And so think about this, where you are right now. Think about in the future how much more it would be. Here in Houston, we're based here in Houston, but we have places all over the United States and even in Canada. But, here in Houston alone, the average traditional funeral ranges about $12,000. And you think about 10 years from now, that can go to about 23, 24,000. Another 10 years from now, it can double. So you can protect your family from having that financial burden, easing that from them, giving them one less thing so they can actually have that final farewell and celebrate your life and pay their respects, right? So we're here to learn to plan to make it right. There's 4 simple steps. What seems to be a difficult conversation, we want to make it easy for you to reflect, record, secure, and to share are the 4 simple steps. First step is reflecting. How do I want to be remembered? What should my service say about my life, right? What's my passion? What are some of the hobbies? Some of the things that if that would remind your family about you, right? It could be a song, it could be a poem, it could be a scripture, lots of different things that could represent us, and that service can truly tell a story and bring to light your legacy. And at the end of the day, we have to reflect upon whether we would like a traditional burial or a cremation. And so also commemorating a life with a permanent memorial, this brings us to the cemetery. And so, the cemetery, as you see on the screen, we in our industry, we call it the park, because we took away that Hollywood spooky feel. We wanted it to feel more of a park, because we know historically that this is where the next generation will come and learn about your story, right? Our family will reflect, will remember us, and so it's really important. If you haven't locked in your cemetery, you can also lock in your cemetery. That's one of the first steps to take, especially when it comes to final arrangements, is locking in your space or niche. Even for our cremation families, just because we decide to be cremated doesn't mean that we have to leave an urn that's going to sit on the mantle of our families for many, many years to come. I mean, how many generations are going to go by before somebody says, what's this urn doing here with great, 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 great grandma, right? So we can actually have a final resting place to have that same type of feeling, just like a traditional burial, where the next generation can still come and visit and tell our story. We also record our wishes. We have what's called a personal planning guide. So when you reach out to us and schedule a time to meet on a more intimate setting where Patricia can go over the plans tailored to what your wishes are, we can provide you what's called a personal planning guide. It's a guide that really, it costs our company maybe $4 or $5 to print each copy, but it answers about 90% of the questions that your loved one would have to answer if we had passed away. And so it's a great first step. Patricia can help you in filling that out and showing you how to do so. But again, if you do that little $4 or $5 guide that costs our company becomes priceless to your family and your loved ones whenever you actually take the time to eliminate that guesswork and fill it out. We also happen to be the only organization that's endorsed by the VFW and the American Legion for our veterans. If we have any veterans in attendance, thank you for your service to our country. And these veteran planning guides also provide every application that you would need to ensure that you get the burial benefits that you're entitled to for having served our country. Even all the other applications, if there's medals that have been lost that need to be recovered, the folding of the flag, all of those applications are in one book, and we can also get those to you as well. The third step is to secure your pre-arrangements. And honestly, I feel like this is the most important one, securing it. At the end of the day, we can talk about it, but if we don't actually have it in place, that we still are leaving a burden behind. Somebody's still going to have to sit in that arrangement room with a funeral director on one of the worst days of their lives, overwhelmed with this loss that just happened, and now they're having to make these decisions. So you can select that funding option with us. If we passed away yesterday, I know that today the funeral home would be asking us, our loved ones, to pay for this in full, right? And so that's what happens whenever we don't plan ahead. But when you plan ahead, you can actually have a convenient payment plan. That we have so many different funeral homes and different plans to fit everybody's budget. At the end of the day, when you meet with us, it's about making sure that we answer your questions, that we find the right solution, and most importantly, that we find a plan that fits within your budget. So the fourth step is to share it. You have to share what you've done. Remember what I asked you to ask yourself: what if I passed away yesterday? Who would be the person walking in? that's who you need to tell. Once you've secured a plan, you need to let them know, you know what, son, this is my plan, my protection plan. If anything were to happen to me, this is the phone number that you call. It's one phone number. Whatever funeral home that you end up selecting for your services, it's a 24-hour number. All you got to let them know is to call that one phone number. Of course, you want to keep copies of all your documents somewhere safe, but our company, of course, has gone digital, so we have everything as well stored. So we know that doing this, it's a wise decision, shows that you care. It's going to provide you and your family with peace of mind on both sides, both for you, knowing that the services that you have selected will go through, and also for your family, right? Not having to, think about, did I do the right thing? Because that's a question, if we don't plan ahead, that they'll never have the answer to, right? Did I really do what dad would have wanted, what mom would have wanted? And of course, easing that financial burden, and it ensures, like I said, your arrangements reflect your wishes. Things to look for in a provider. So Dignity Memorial, we are the largest network of funeral home, cremations, and cemetery in all of North America. But there's some other reasons besides us just being the biggest that I would tell you make a huge difference on planning ahead with us. We have the highest standards of service, 100% satisfaction guarantee. We've served every president since the passing of our President Eisenhower. So I don't say that to impress you, but impress upon you the level of service that we provide for our families. We do have, as I mentioned, nationwide network, which means that you can transfer. In life, things change. They say on average, an American will move 5 times in their lifetime if you haven't already done so. And so what if I plan here or wherever you're located at, and then, a few years down the road, life takes a turn where, my kids, they decided to move somewhere, and I want to watch my grandkids grow up, and now I'm in a completely different state or city. Well, when you plan with us, if you move outside of a 75-mile radius from where you currently live today, we take your plan and cemetery, and we can move it if you so choose that would be where you'd like your services and your final resting place to be. We have bereavement travel and grief support for families. A lot of us, we may live somewhere, but we have family from out of town, out of state. If they need some help to, get their flights done, taken care of, all of their lodging, we have preferred rates and somebody to do that for them, because that's very difficult. You get the news that somebody that you care about so much has passed away, and now you're having to, jump online and make these reservations. That's a burden in itself as well, right? So we can help. We have a compassion helpline to help families after the passing, right? That first 13 months, you have a 24-hour hotline where we have people that are trained with bereavement, the reason bereavement, and they will actually speak with you if you needed it. That first year, that first anniversary without them, the first holidays, those could be difficult times. And sometimes we don't always have somebody that we can open up to. We may or may not, but if you don't, we can provide that for you. We also provide child and grandchild protection, meaning that if you plan ahead, we're sitting here having a conversation that sometimes we believe is a grown-up conversation, but we've endured in my family where my cousin lost her baby after a week of being born, and it was devastating, right? And I hope nobody ever has to endure that. But when we plan ahead with Dignity Memorial, not only are we covered, but our children and grandchildren under the age of 21 are also covered, heavens forbid something happened to them. And then we also, lastly, we provide away from home protection. How many of us know where we're going to pass away? The reality of it is we don't know where this event's going to take place. It could take place here in town where we live in. It could take place somewhere completely different. It could be on a vacation. It could be where we're driving somewhere and we're not in town. And have you ever asked yourself, well, what would happen then, right? How much would it cost my family if I'm out in Europe on a vacation and heavens forbid that something happened to me? Well, our company, when you plan with us, your plan will include a transportation relocation protection plan, meaning that no matter where this happens, we bring you back home so that your family gets to pay their respects and gets the closure that they deserve. So those are what we call the dignity difference. And so again, Dignity Memorial, we're dedicated to delivering compassionate, personalized, and professional care. We're the leading brand with funeral, cremation, and cemetery services. Over 2,000 providers in North America. So no matter where where you're joining us from, we do have a provider near you and that we can refer you to, or if not, help you with as well. Me and Patricia particularly are licensed here in the state of Texas, but if you are not from Texas, we can certainly refer you to some of our colleagues in other states as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for our presentation. It's again about your life, your legacy, and I'm telling you, plan to make it right. We know it's the right thing to do. At the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, whose responsibility really is this? And if you answer that saying, you know what, this is my responsibility, then I hope that you take the time to call Patricia and meet with her, and she can show you a plan that's tailored to your wishes and that can protect your family from going through something so devastating, so overwhelming on what could be one of the worst days of their lives. So thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to you, Michelle. Is there any questions that came up on the?
We did not have any questions come up, but I do want to reassure everybody that after this webinar, we will send an email to you. You left us your email when you registered, and it will have all of the contact information that you would need to be able to reach out to Dino and Patricia and get an appointment scheduled so that you can discuss some of these things. You can ask for the planning booklet that they were talking about. I have one myself, and it is fantastic information. I feel that this is just so important, and I'm so thankful for you, Dino and Patricia, for being with us today and going through this, because my mom passed away just a little over a year ago, and it was just so hard, and I couldn't imagine going through this without some of the pre-planning that had been done. And I know it's hard to talk about, but you really need to talk about these sort of things. When it comes to financial planning for the end of your life is also a part of it. And it's, you have to think about these things in advance. My husband, as a matter of fact, just got back from a trip to visit his parents, and he knew that this webinar was coming up and that we would be talking. And he tried to initiate some conversation with his parents about these issues, and still they're very hesitant. And it's just the generation, they don't want to talk about death. They don't want to talk about finances. And it's so important to talk to your loved ones about these things. They don't have to let you know exactly what is in each account, but they need to let you know who's going to be in charge in your family of taking care of all this. Things that you need to think about, and that should be on your planning radar as this comprehensive plan of your life. You need a financial plan. You need to think about Social Security. We can offer a Social Security analysis that will tell you when you should start drawing your Social Security and how much you're likely to get. You should build a team for yourself and within your family. Who's going to be in charge of what? Do you want one person to be in charge of everything? Maybe you have more than one child or very close relatives or friends, and you would want one to be in charge of this aspect and one to be in charge of that aspect. You have to plan these things in advance and let all of them know who is who and what responsibilities you would like for them to take on. Of course, it's very, very important to have a will. You might need a trust or a special needs trust, but you also have to let people know where those things are. It doesn't help if you have every important document locked away in a safe or a safety deposit box, but you don't let anybody know where or where the key is. You might need to consider who's going to take care of your children or your beloved pets. I have 3 dogs, and I worry way more about them because my kids are older. They can take care of themselves, but who's going to take care of my dogs? It's a lot to think about. The more that you plan ahead, the better you are. Do you have medical power of attorneys set up for your family? Do you have all of your beneficiaries up to date? Maybe at one time you were married and you had a beneficiary on an account who is now your ex-spouse and haven't changed it because you haven't thought about it. Even if you change your will, and this is an important tip, your beneficiary on your insurance documents or your retirement plans or your investments, whoever you have listed as your beneficiary on those is where the money will go. It does not matter what your will says. So you need to get that updated and just take a look and make sure it's still what you want. Transfer on debt. That's where it automatically transfers bank account balances to a beneficiary. Do you have that set up? Who are your trusted contacts? Who are, your closest friends that you would want your family to reach out to and let them know that something's happened to you? When you pay your bills, do you go online and have online banking? What are your passwords? What are your account numbers? All of these things really need to be thought out ahead of time and left with someone who can take care of them because you're going to be gone. A couple of personal things I think of, I think about leaving that legacy with your family, that family history, those stories. Maybe it's a great time to start making sure your pictures, if you have printed pictures still, are labeled, or print some of those digital pictures so that your family can have them and pass them on to future generations. Maybe write letters to your family members, letting them know what you want to have done, what memories you have with them, what you love about them. Maybe take the time to write a family history down so that they can pass on that information from generation to generation. For me, that is extremely important. My grandparents did a family history and I just love it. My husband's grandparents did some extensive family tracing, so he knows where they came from and all of that. It's just so important. So as you plan these things, like I said, make sure you share them with your family. You don't have to tell them exactly what's being left to whom or how much is in your accounts, but they do need to know how to help, what they can do when the time comes, because none of us are going to be able to avoid it. It just is what it is. So I guess that's about all I have. Oh, one last financial tip. You might want to consider simplifying your finances before the time comes. Maybe you've had several jobs throughout your life and each one offered you a 401k plan. And now you have a 401k plan over here from job A and a 401k plan over here from job B and several different accounts all over the place. It's a great time to consider combining those so that when the time comes, it's easier on everybody. And of course, we can help you with that too. So I think that's about all I have. Dino, again, thank you so much for the information. If you could go on to the next slide, it's got my contact information. We also have a Facebook page and a YouTube channel. We do a lot of webinars. People can look on our YouTube channel for those webinars. They can contact me, but like I said, you will be getting an email after this. It will include our contact information. It will also include a link to this video because I've been recording this webinar. So if you missed it or you had to step out, welcome back. But yes, just reach out to any of us if you have questions or concerns, or if there's anything we can do. And I'll check one last time for any questions. Nope, no notes and chats, no questions like that. So thank you again for everybody for being here with us today, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you guys. Bye.